Welcome, Facebook Live audience. We're here at Station 8, which is the Wildland station in Gun Barrel, and we're here to talk to some of our wildland firefighters and learn a little more about what they do every day.
I'm Aaron Doyle. I'm one of the wildfire operations specialists here at Station 8. We're going to take you through some of the things we do a day in the life of and what fighting wildfire in Colorado and specifically Boulder County and Boulder City is like.
Hi, I'm Jamie Carpenter. I'm another one of the wildfire operations specialists here at Fire Station 8. And we're not only going to talk about the things that we do here at the fire station and in the community, but also what you can do to be prepared for a wildfire. Why don't you come inside and we'll start. Welcome to Fire Station 8. This is a big, nice building. We're very thankful to have it. And part of the reason that it's so big is that it's also not just meant to house the Wildland Division and the Wildland Program, but also be a part of the incident command post if we were to have a big incident. We've already utilized it once since it's been in use. We want to start by talking about how you can be prepared for a wildfire. So we have for the city of Boulder, we have a wildfire preparedness guide. This is available online, and I believe there's a link in the caption for this Facebook Live event. And this outlines all of the things that you can do to be prepared. So the ones that we want to prioritize, the messages we want to send is, first of all, sign up for emergency notification. So the website to sign up for the city and county Everbridge program that will get you registered for emergency notifications is also, I believe, in the link. If not, it's boco911alert.com. Yeah. We'll get that link up there for you, but very easy to sign up for if you live in the city of Boulder or in Boulder County, and you'll get notifications in a timely manner if there's an emergency. The next thing is preparing your home and property. So we have a little bit of a graphic display here of some good and bad things that you can do to prepare your property. So the first is starting at the home, working out. You notice on this home here on the left, there's a non-combustible landscaping around the entire perimeter of the house. So this is meant to simulate gravel. And then some low-growing vegetation that looks like it's irrigated. And then moving a little bit further out from the house, they've also got a metal roof or non-combustible asphalt roof. And if it had windows, they would be high-quality windows, and the vents would be covered with a screen to prevent embers from getting in. Because that's a big part of the preparation, is not just focusing on the flaming front, but also if an ember were to land here or here from a wildfire, what would be the result? So we want to prepare for that, an ember to land somewhere and have it not result in fire extending or spreading to the house. We've also got a green mowed lawn and deciduous vegetation throughout the yard, and their firewood stacked away from the house. So I think a common misconception is that you have to cut all your trees to have defensible space or fire-wise landscaping. Not always the case. A lot of times you can still have the trees in your yard that are your favorites as long as they're limbed up. And we also offer a free home assessment for City of Boulder residents. So if you're interested in that, look at the fire department website and we can get you a free assessment for your property. This house over here, not as well prepared. So notice that they've got some dead grass right in next to their house, and then some evergreens growing here and some brushy material here that if an ember were to land in this area, it could, promote fire extension, from that vegetation to the house real easily. And unmowed, dead grass, and vegetation very close to the house, all things that we discourage. And there's a lot more that goes into preparing your home and property, and we look forward to answering any questions either on this live session or in the future if you've got questions for us. The third element of our message is family disaster preparedness. So specialized for wildfire, but we encourage every family to have a disaster plan. So if something goes wrong, does that mean, how are you going to be prepared? How are you going to communicate if the cellular network is overrun or internet service is down? Do you have a rally point to meet up? How are you going to care for your pets if you're not able to get back to your house? Things like that we want people to think ahead. And there are lots of tips that are both in the Wildland Fire Preparedness Guide, and that can be found online at the Red Cross is a good resource for that. And that's the main wildfire preparedness message, so we look forward to answering any more questions about that. And if there aren't any, we'll transition over to Aaron, and he's going to talk a little bit more about what we do here.
Yeah, I'll take you guys through kind of a tour of this part of Station 8. A little bit of background. Most of the folks that work here at the station, we all came from prior Forest Service, like hotshot crews or engines. A lot of folks worked in aviation, so we've all kind of been selected, and the city really recognizes the importance of having that expertise in-house, because if we do get the incident that threatens Boulder, organization is a really important part of it. But as we're making our way through here, generally morning at Station 8 starts here at this table. We'll do sort of a briefing. I'll take you through some of the things that we look at, but weather for the day is really important. We look at some of the other available sort of assets that we have, such as aircraft and air tankers. But after that's all finished and we do our physical fitness training, do our workout, then we make our way into the kitchen, and it tends to be this nice clean area gets pretty blown up, mainly by bacon. We eat a lot of bacon here. Very important part of our diet. But again, this is a really important part too, because we'll go upstairs, we'll kind of show you our workout room, but we have to do a lot of fitness training to maintain kind of a high level of that fitness and nutrition. So this is really kind of I would say, sort of the heart of Station 8 too, but we'll take you on the rest of it. I want to take you over and just show you a couple of products that we take or that we look at for our briefings in the morning, the weather forecast, and some of the maps that we use to kind of take a look and predict fire danger. It'll take just a second here while I fire the computer back up. Okay, this first map that we're looking at, this is a product that the state of Colorado has helped put together, accessible to first responders and firefighters, and it's got a whole bunch of different layers on it. What we're looking at here is, this is that lightning storm that came through yesterday. We're zoomed in sort of on Boulder and Denver, and we can see the track of that path of the lightning and the storm. And this shows us some different stuff. You'll see the green strikes with a circle around them. That indicates a positive strike. Generally, those are the ones that potentially could start wildland fires. They're more the cloud to ground, and the ionization or of the strike tends to be more indicative of creating a fire. So you can see a lot of lightning came through yesterday afternoon. So we would use this potentially to maybe go and look at if there was potentially fires burning, or where to go to start looking. The other thing this is showing is these WXs. These are what they call remote automated weather stations. And they're tracking weather and kind of the moisture content of some of the components of the wildland environment, like trees and shrub and grass, so that we give an idea of basically fire danger. This is where Smokey's arm, you think about where he's going from green to up to extreme. This is where this data comes from. So it's not just an arbitrary thing, it's actual numbers behind it. And I'll show you one other map which shows that a little bit better. These arrows, so this is what we call the energy release component. This is an important number for us because it gives us the potential of what fire can do. And what these are showing is that fire danger is increasing drastically. We had a lot of moisture a couple of weeks ago, so the grass got tall, and now things are really starting to dry out. In particular, when we look at the dark red or the purple, that's getting up into the very high to extreme fire danger category. So it's starting to work its way up north across Colorado, and we do have a couple fires burning down by Durango and in this area, but they're also starting to pick up fires in other places. So all in all, it's getting busier, and we're ready. So from here, we'll head upstairs and take a look at the workout area and some of the other spots that we function.
And as we start to head upstairs, just a reminder, if you're just joining us, we're live at Station 8, which is the Wildland station in Gun Barrel. So if you see anything in the video, if you have a question about the equipment or why the room is set up the way it is, wildland safety, or just what it's like to be a wildland fighter, please post your question now and we'll try to get it answered live for you.
All right, you're back. We'll head up the stairs. So a day in the life for us, it's a lot of different things. Obviously, we're ready to respond to fires. We do a lot of training of other entities. So, hi Tom.
Hey.
It's one of our other guys. Training. So we're actually, we're firefighters and we have offices. So in our offices, again, you can see BJ's kind of looking at some mapping information. We do a lot of pre-planning in here too, to kind of get ready for the day, the week. And then in the off-season, we do a lot of training of other firefighters and just kind of getting people ready to go and more dialed in on wildfire. But off to your right over here, this is one of our workout areas. We do a lot outside, so I want to kind of equate wildland firefighting and structure firefighting. To me, and to a lot of people, wildland firefighting is kind of like a marathon, where structure firefighting is kind of like a sprint. It's very intense workout, but generally it's a shorter amount of time. When we go out on fires, we may be out for 14 days in a row, working 16-hour days, hiking, digging, lifting heavy things, so it can really take a toll on the body. So we try to prepare for that in here, a lot of that being cardiovascular health. I think, personally, one of the longest just getting to a fire, had to hike 17 miles before we went and actually did any work. Luckily around here, we have roads most places, so we're able to drive. But we just want to be ready for that kind of stuff. Cool. We can do a quick lap around and we'll head back downstairs to the bay and show you some of our apparatus and some of the other things that we have. We've got a conference room for meetings and meeting with other agencies, again, for planning. Obviously, you see Station 8 has a good lookout towards the foothills where our biggest concern for fire starts is. And as we walk by here, this is just people's offices that we do our day-to-day stuff in. Generally, the station is only staffed for a part of the day. As fire danger increases, we'll increase that staffing. So we're not the firefighters that stay at the station 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We will do that if fire danger indicates it. So if we get something like the Chinook winds that we've had or red flag warnings, there will be people here to respond to fires and be able to help out. But our general schedule puts us here just parts of the day of a week, and then fire danger generally decreases in the evening, but we're still available on call if we need to. We'll head out here with Jamie back into the bay and show you some of our other stuff.
Okay, we're in our apparatus bay and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the equipment that we use. So start by talking about some of the personal protective equipment that we wear. So I've spilled out the contents of my line pack here so we can take a look at some of the things that go in the heavy backpacks that we carry. But like Aaron alluded to, the protective equipment that we wear as wildland firefighters is very different than structure firefighters. So we're exposed to a lot less radiant heat, so we don't have to wear the big thick coats and pants and boots and stuff. So we have logging or stout hiking boots that we wear. We have Nomex pants that are not fireproof, but they're fire resistant. And then we also have a Nomex shirt that's made of the same material, and plastic hard hat that we wear. So again, much lighter, much easier to wear all day than the structure firefighting equipment. These are chaps that we wear when we're running the chainsaw, which is one of my favorite things to do. So these are Cordura on the outside and then Kevlar strands on the inside, so that if we were to have an accident and slip with the chainsaw, that would pull those Kevlar strands out and ideally stop the chain from spinning before it contacted our leg. So chaps for running chainsaw. We wear leather gloves, so just basic, similar to the ones that you'd wear working in your yard. And some of the tools that we've got here, some more protective equipment. So this is our fire shelter. This lives in our line gear and is with us all the time when we're on a fire. And this is a last resort survival tool. So this is not something that we use on a routine basis, but it's something that if our safety protocols fail and we made a mistake, then this gives us a chance to survive in that last resort situation. And it's essentially a large aluminum foil and silica tent that would go around us and protect us from some radiant heat. But this is not going to protect us under all conditions, so we take our safety protocols really safely. We have a lookout in place. We always have communication with our other firefighters and supervisors, and we have an escape route and a safety zone. We have a way to get to a safe place no matter what the fire does.
Hey, Jamie. Sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt, but we had someone ask the question.
Sure.
Do firefighters in the station typically help out with fires in other communities?
Yes, we do. In fact, this engine is available right now to go anywhere in the nation. So we take turns. We can't all be gone at the same time, but 3 of us can be gone at a time of the 8 people that work here. And we are available to go to national assignments. So people that work in this building have been anywhere from Alaska to Florida, to Northeast, excuse me, and California and the Southwest. So we've been all over the country, and we're available to do that. And we do that for a couple of reasons. First of all, we want to have people come here and help us in other parts of the country when we need help. And we also utilize that to gain experience and keep our skills sharp.
Thank you.
Sure, good question. Some of the other tools we've got here, GPS unit. So our smartphones do a lot of this, but it's nice to have this as a backup. We also I carry some basic medical supplies with me. So if we were to have a situation where there was serious bleeding, I've got some equipment to deal with that, and then some basic first aid stuff. Headlamp, we work at night as well. So this attaches to my hard hat, and we can see at night. So also for nighttime firefighting are these chem lights or glow sticks. So this is a good way to communicate with other firefighters and mark locations so they can be seen at night, because the flagging that we carry is a little bit more difficult to see at night. So this is special flagging that would be used to identify a hazard tree.
So how heavy is the bag you carry?
The bag that I carry is right around 40 pounds. And most of it is comprised of drinking water and the fire shelter. Those are the heaviest things in there. And like Aaron alluded to earlier, the nutrition and hydration are really vital. Taking care of ourselves is the most important thing that we do on the fire line. So keeping up with our hydration, our electrolyte intake, and our nutrition is really important, and that's up to us. So we carry, in this pack, I could survive for 12 to 24 hours. I probably need a resupply on the water, but that's something that's pretty routine for us, is to have extra drinking water at the truck or on the fire line.
Another question they asked was, what do you think is the hottest part of the fire?
The hottest part of the fire is, as we describe fire behavior, it's usually the head of the fire is how we describe the most active part of the fire. But it's hot really in all phases. So some of the direct firefighting that we do, so that's one of the strategies we would use, where we'd go right as close to the perimeter of the fire as we can get and either spray water or dig what we call hand line, which is essentially a trench in the dirt to break up the burning material so that there's a break in there. So it's all hot. But one of the most important jobs that we do is mop up. It's the least glamorous, but that's where we go in after we've contained the fire and make sure that the line is secure, and we crawl around on our hands and knees and put our hands in the dirt and make sure that it's cold, and that's hot too. Yeah.
So Jamie, a lot of people think of firefighting as a truck responding and putting water on the fire.
Sure.
There are a lot of tools that I see behind you, such as a chainsaw, a shovel, things that people have in their home.
Sure.
How do you use those to fight fires in Boulder?
Absolutely. So when I mentioned that direct strategy where we're going to go right to the perimeter of the fire if the fire behavior is appropriate for us to do that, and we're going to first of all use the chainsaw. So those are utilized to cut the bigger vegetation, the trees and brush and stuff like that, or the logs that are on the ground. And then we'll come in after the chainsaws with the hand tools. So there are an array of hand tools here. The Pulaski is the one with an axe on one end, and then the grub end on the other. And the scraping tools are over there on the left. So this is a very common wildland firefighting tool. And then the scrapes are on the left, so the scraping tools would follow up behind the Pulaski, and that would move dirt and pine needles and stuff like that out of the way. And some of the other tools that we've got sort of in our quiver, this is a drip torch. So if we were to take the inside of it out, and I can do that so we can see what this looks like. So sometimes we fight fire with fire. So if there's a large fire that we're not able to use that direct strategy on, we're not able to get right next to the fire, then we would find another control feature like a road or a trail or maybe some constructed hand line or something like that. And we would put fire down on the ground so that our fire protects the area, the values at risk that we want to protect. So this spout comes out of here, and this is a mix of diesel and gas so that the vapors aren't as flammable, but it still burns when we put it on the ground. And we also use this as a tool in prescribed fire, and that's another topic that we want to discuss because it's a really important part of what we do, both from a mitigation standpoint and from an ecosystem restoration standpoint. So we have a prescribed fire program that we implement and plan and implement in conjunction with our partners at Open Space and Mountain Parks. And we conduct prescribed fires on open space and mountain parks land, and it's one of the really fun parts of our job, but it's something that is vitally important from the mitigation standpoint. And because it's a dangerous tool that we're using, we plan meticulously, and we have lots of different options on that day of that we're burning, so that if we don't like what we're seeing, we can hang it up.
Hey, Gene, we got a question from Vera, who asks, how much training do you do?
We do a lot of training. So our priorities on a day-to-day basis start with fire suppression. So if there's a fire, we're going to go and help put it out and manage that fire. And then training is the next priority. So the basic training to be a wildland firefighter is about 40 hours. And that's just the very beginning. There's an entire series of classes that on topics like fire behavior and using the different tools that we use. So there's another 32-hour class that you go through to be certified to start utilizing one of these chainsaws. And there's a whole series of classes that we go through, and the most important training that we get is the on-the-job training. So there are a series of qualifications that we go through, and each of those has a position task book. So it's a little bit like a merit badge, except that it carries a lot more responsibility, and we have to go through each of those task books and have a number of different people evaluate us for those different positions, whether it's a leadership position or a specific skill like using a chainsaw or an engine or something like that.
So going back to the topic of prescribed burns,
Yeah.
How do you determine if an area is in need of a prescribed burn, and is this something that you can do year-round?
Let's start with how the process starts. So we, again, have a really strong partnership with Open Space and Mountain Parks, and they will actually come to us and say, hey, listen, we've got this area that has this specific ecological or mitigation factor that we want to address, and we feel like fire is a good tool. And that's where the planning process starts with Mike Smith, who has the same title as Aaron and I, but he specializes in the prescribed fire program. He will start that evaluation and that planning process of evaluating what stuff is growing there, how do we think it's going to burn, how do we want to lay it out, how are we going to keep it in the area where we want to keep it. And that planning process is pretty lengthy. And depending on the elevation, and most of the elevation of the places that we want to burn that are close to the wildland urban interface or have those ecological benefits are at slightly lower elevation. And we're restricted by the smoke that we produce as to when we can burn. So there are some exclusions in the winter, typically when the air quality is worse because the air is cold. So we try our best to take advantage of any window of opportunity that we have to burn, but they're extremely limited because of the smoke is such a big health concern.
Have we found that there has been a benefit when we have had some actual big fires in Boulder,
Yeah.
that the prescribed burns that you've done in advance have really helped us in getting the fire under control quicker?
Yeah, we have. So the Sunshine Canyon fire last March, that burned into an area where we did some fuel mitigation, where we had gone in and thinned some trees out. And the follow-up to that, to dispose of some of the slash, we burned some piles, which is technically a prescribed fire. And we did find that that was helpful in the end result of that fire not coming into the city.
Can you tell us what the favorite part of your job is?
Oh, there's so many favorite parts. I think probably my favorite part is the guys that I work with, is just coming to work and getting to spend time with these guys because they're really fun to work with. But after that, I think that my second favorite is probably running a chainsaw, and my third favorite is probably using the drip torch and putting fire on the ground.
Great. Shall we move?
So just a couple more tools. These are fusees are kind of like road flares. There are other firing devices that we can use, and we'll utilize these again in a last resort situation. If my escape route and safety zone aren't valid anymore, then I could put some fire down and have a good place to deploy my fire shelter. We utilize MREs quite a bit because they don't expire. They have a long shelf life, and their calories, they're not the best tasting. Some of the people that work here really like them, and others will eat them if we have to, but the most important thing is that we get the calories that we need, so that's why we carry MREs, and I've got a bag of some of my other special snacks stuffed in there so that I can have the food that I want. We also, like I said, we need to be prepared to be out for an extended period of time from this pack, so all the human needs from using the bathroom in the woods to staying warm. So in here I've got an extra layer and a warm hat, some rain protection. It's not fancy on purpose because that way if it gets dirty and destroyed, then it was very inexpensive. And then a space blanket so that if I, in a rare case, need to spend the night out, I'll be at least a little warm. And we do quite a bit of work with helicopters. So this is the flight helmet that we would wear if we were to fly in a helicopter. That's another cool part of our job, is getting to work with aircraft, and we do quite a bit of that. So this is a tool that we'd use flying in a helicopter. And then, like the question we had about going on assignments outside of the area, this is the personal gear bag that I would take with me. So I can live out of this bag for 2 weeks. It's got a tent, a sleeping bag, sleeping pad, and all the clothes and toiletries and stuff that I need for 2 weeks. So that's all lives in this bag, and that's another fun part, is going to see cool parts of the country and help other places fight fire.
So you mentioned some of the overnight gear that you carried with you. If there's a fire, does that mean that you get to go home at night when your shift is over, or does someone have to actually stay on the fire and keep eyes on it?
Yeah, somebody stays on the fire. So that's determined by the incident commander, and usually if there's still heat on that fire, whether it's prescribed or wildfire, somebody's there. So there does become a point where the fire is it's contained, and we feel like it would hold under all conditions. There may still be some heat here and there. If it's a wildfire, the night staffing will start to be reduced. But for a prescribed fire, especially if there is any heat expected to be in that area, then there will be staff there overnight monitoring that fire.
So people of Boulder can rest easy knowing that you're keeping us safe literally 24 hours a day.
That's right. Yeah, and even though our normal work hours are just during the day, if there's a fire, there will be somebody there watching it. Absolutely.
So if you're just tuning in live with us, we are at Station 8, which is the Wildland station in Gun Barrel. We're here learning a little bit more of what it takes to be a wildland firefighter, ways that you can keep your home and family safe, and a little bit more about the equipment and training that it takes to become a wildland firefighter. If you have any questions as we're chatting about the different things we do, feel free to ask us and we will try to answer that question live for you.
Okay, I think we've covered the gear that we use pretty well, and Aaron's going to tell us about some of the equipment, or some of the apparatus that we use.
Okay, hi guys, Aaron here again. So, whether a wildland firefighter jumps out of an airplane, rappels out of a helicopter, hikes 17 miles, shows up in a fire truck, once we get there, we're all trying to do the same thing. So we'll walk you through some of the different apparatus that we utilize in the fire service. We call trucks apparatus. This is one of our larger ones. This is a Type 3 engine. You'll notice a little bit of difference. It doesn't have all the same capacity that like a structure engine, like the big red engines you see driving around the city would have. And it's got a little bit of differences. Obviously, it's lifted a little bit higher. It has all-wheel drive, so it can go off-road. So this thing is really designed to get water to places that those engines can't go. Even if we go smaller than that, this is a Type 6 engine, and basically it just looks like a kind of a big Ford F-350, or this is a 550 with a pump package on the back. And again, this can go places that even this larger engine cannot. So really, it's all about matching the right tool to the job. Like Jamie was talking about chainsaws and scrape tools and the Pulaski. That's kind of what we're doing here. And in the background here, we even have a 4-person UTV, so that might get us even a little closer to the fire than having to park one of these engines and hike farther. So we just kind of have to balance all that stuff out. You know, it's kind of funny. We've been doing this now for, close to 15 plus years. I think among the group, there's over 150 years of experience between the 9 of us. But I can't even count how many times I've driven to a fire in a fire engine and then hiked 3 miles and never touched the engine. This really just becomes a vehicle to transport you in. So we'll do a quick tour of, this is engine 2539 for the city of Boulder and kind of what we have on board. So in the compartments, various stuff. A lot of hose and a lot of different ways to transport it. We don't necessarily unroll hose like structure firefighters do. We can't carry around huge 5.5-inch lines. So our hose is a little bit smaller. I'll show you some here in a second, but we just kind of keep some of the gear we need, and we might have to throw 300 feet of hose in a backpack to get it to the fire. And again, this engine, as we said before, is now available to go anywhere in the country, so it has to have all the stuff we need for that too. So we've got extra fire shelters, a lot of those really delicious, joking, MREs that Jamie was talking about, extra hose here. You'll see, isn't it kind of funny to think that a Wildland fire engine has basically garden hose on it? We have to really conserve water out there. When it's 3, 5, 10 miles to get to a fire hydrant or a river or anything that we can get water to fill up this 500-gallon tank, we have to conserve what we're doing at the end of the nozzle. So by reducing down to something as small as a garden hose, it's all about conserving that water. Now when we got big flames, we're gonna use as much water as we can, but as Jamie mentioned, that mop-up mode, we're really gonna work into water conservation. So again, just a medley of things here in this compartment. Here we've got some of the tools. So again, matching the right tool for the job. These are a couple of the Pulaskis. We've got some of the scraping tools. That's really all these kind of do, and we just have a selection of them here. You'll notice that we have tape on the edges of a lot of these. We keep these tools razor sharp because they have to cut through roots and different things like that, and we're constantly sharpening them out in the field too because they're most effective that way. I'll take you right through the back. We'll do a walk right through the cab of 2539. Come on up. So it's pretty roomy in here. This fits 5 people, and if we go on an off-forest or an assignment out of the city, we'll put 4 to 5 people on here to go to the fire, but it rides pretty comfortably. It's got all the amenities, poor quality speakers, only an AM radio. You know, I'm just kidding, but it's not that bad. It's kind of funny, everybody looks towards the front of these things and they say, wow, it's so complicated, but it's really not. A lot of the buttons and switches do the same things like being in your car. I mean, we have air conditioning and a radio, and yeah, we have lights and sirens and that sort of stuff, but it's really not that different from a car. This is a really nice engine because we can operate the pump from sitting in the driver's seat. So the driver doesn't even really have to ever get out to get water to the outside so people can start getting water on fires. But lots of maps and anything we need there. We do keep a medical pack in case we come across public or anybody needing help or even our own people.
So what's it like driving one of these off-road?
It can be a little bit nerve-wracking driving this off-road. You know, I mean, in my civilian life, I drive a Subaru Crosstrek, so it's a little different than this. But you really have to really be aware of more how wide you are. We drive some really narrow roads, and there's been some pretty bad accidents with these type of engines inadvertently sliding off the side of the road, and because of all the weight, this thing weighs almost 26,000 pounds, that road can give away. So we got to really pay attention to small bridges, and more importantly, we'll scout out ahead to make sure we can turn around. One of the worst situations we could get into is we drive into a fire, and the fire then threatens our position, and we can't turn this engine around, and we would have to back out. So we make sure that we know where we're going before we commit to it. But it's pretty fun. It's really slow, kind of like a cement mixer. The worst place to drive it is down the interstate. It governs out at 65 miles an hour.
65?
Yep. So we may get there, but we won't get there fast.
How long does it take to learn to motorize the vehicle?
So to learn how to operate this, we do some basic training. The pumping is kind of the more complicated spot, and then just some basic driver training, just getting experience on driving around the city. So we'll set up cone courses. So you start to understand the width and sort of the acceleration. One of the big things with such a heavy vehicle is the air brake system and the braking distances. That's a lot different than driving around in a normal vehicle. Yeah. So again, this is the pump panel. So usually the person that's driving becomes the engineer or the operator at the pump panel. And again, this looks really complicated too, but if you zoom in close, you'll see that some of these buttons and switches say nothing more than panel lights, hosebed lights, perimeter lights, spare, that's nothing. So it's actually a pretty simple system. We just have to think about where the water's coming from, whether it's from a tank or from a fire hydrant, and then where's the water going to. So are we pulling, this is what we call the hard line or the quick attack sort of line. And this is just, there's already water in it, but we just have to open one valve and we would have water out to this. So it's actually pretty simple once you get water flowing through the pump. Really high capacity. We could drain the 500 gallons in this if we really throttled everything up and went full blast in about 30 seconds. So again, that water conservation aspect that I was talking about really becomes important because you don't want to be trying to put out a fire and then be out of water.
So when you're fighting a fire in Boulder, are you just using water that you carry with you on the truck, or is it coming from other sources as well? We'll
use all kinds of sources. So if we're doing what we call initial attack, that's that first response to, say, a relatively small fire. If we have a fire hydrant that's nearby that we can hook to, so we've got some larger diameter hose that we can run off a fire hydrant and then supply this truck up to, I think, about 800 feet away from a fire hydrant. The other option is if we don't have a water source close by, we just kind of have to shuttle back and forth, and we might use multiple engines to kind of support firefighters out on the ground. In other places where we don't have a fire or a hydrant system, or in a lot of times a hydrant system, we're very lucky in Boulder that our hydrant system is gravity fed. It's not reliant on power. A lot of areas rely on pumps to pump the hydrants, and when a fire comes through, the power goes out and then the hydrants are dead. So what we can do in that case is we can draft water from a water source like a creek or a river or a swimming pool or a hot tub or pretty much wherever we find it. The other places we'll get water would be from the sky, and I don't mean rain. By communicating with helicopters that have those big buckets, they'll help us out a lot to try to cool off the fire edge while we're trying to get a line around it. And that's really the ultimate goal, is cool the fire and then secure the fire by getting a line around it, removing the fuels, like I mentioned before, pine needles, grasses, all that stuff, so that the fire has nothing left to burn. That's really what we're shooting for, and then we move through and mop up to make sure the fire is 100% out.
So whenever you're in Boulder and there's a fire, you always hear of what percentage is the fire contained.
Right.
When you hit 100%, does that mean the fire's out?
No, that's a really good question. So we really look at three different phases of fire control: contained, controlled, and out. So on the news, and whether we have a fire here in Boulder, people really want to know what percent is the fire contained, and it really means just that. If my hand is a fire, and we're starting here to go around it, and I get this far around with a line, we'll call it 50% contained. As we come around here, and get to here, maybe 80% contained. When those two lines meet back together, we've got line all the way around the fire, and we're relatively confident that it's going to stay in that line. We'll go 100% contained. All that means is that it's 100% contained. That means there's something around the fire. We're not necessarily sure it's going to stay out. Say if we get a wind event or something that blows an ember over the line, it might rekindle or get going again, and you might see that containment number drop back down. Controlled is where we feel, once we say a fire is controlled, that means that under pretty much any weather circumstance, we're confident that that fire is no longer going to be a threat. Now, out is the real trickster. For a fire to be called out, sometimes it's months. In Boulder, we work pretty hard to make sure that they're out beforehand by what we call it cold trailing. That's literally feeling almost every square inch of the fire with our hands to make sure there's no heat left. But larger fires sometimes can be months before they're really controlled or considered out. Good question.
We had a question come in from Carrie, and she asked, speaking of wildfires, if mitigation work around the house can really make a difference in saving a home.
Absolutely, Carrie. That's a great question. So a couple of things to understand is it's in the event of a fire, it's not necessarily the firefighter's responsibility to ensure we save every home. Really, in a wildland fire, it's the homeowner's responsibility to make sure that work is done beforehand. We're going to do everything we can in every scenario, but depending on the fire, we may not have enough resources. So mitigation is pretty much the number one thing that people can do. And as Jamie mentioned earlier, we're not talking about clear cutting everything in your yard and make the trees are gone. Really, if you just kind of think about how a fire might burn. If the term ladder fuels, I don't think we've introduced that yet, but that's a really big thing to consider. So if you're looking at a ladder with all the different rungs, right? So how is fire going to climb up the rungs of the ladder? So if you look at grass, brush, the lower branches of trees, to the tops of trees, and then the spacing between the tops of the trees, that's kind of how we do a quick assessment of fire potential. So those are those ladder fuels. So by separating those rungs, if we cut the grass lower, or we cut the shrubs, or we limb the tree up a little bit higher so that flames can't reach, that's a big help. The other thing, mitigation is huge, is looking what fuels, again, pine needles, grasses, things near your house might receive embers. So one of the things we like to do is we'll walk around, and if you look and you see where leaves will spin around and eddy into a corner, they'll kind of get piled up in a corner. Generally, a fire, embers would probably do the same thing. So if you look at those areas and say, what would happen if an ember were sitting here? And if there is a pile of leaves or something that could start fire, that's a good place to kind of do that. We call it sort of micro-mitigation, right? Looking at the roof and your gutters to make sure pine needles are clear. One of the biggest things they found now looking at studies with the way embers travel is the size of the mesh screening in the vents. So if you look at your house and you've got the 1/2-inch mesh, it might be something to consider to go to a smaller mesh to prevent those embers from entering into the space of the house. We're really starting to find out that it's not necessarily the flaming front that ignites a home. It's either the embers that pass or that come beforehand, or even long after the flaming front passes through, something that's smoldering that continues and may ignite the home. I hope that answers your question, Carrie. Okay, so continuing here, looking at 2539. This compartment here is sort of designed for the engineer. I'll get it open up here. I'm sorry if I interrupt your view. So it's kind of corner to where the engineer might work, and this is where all the stuff is to keep the hose lays rolling. We call these gated Ys. This is basically just like your garden, just a larger version of it. So we have adapters for all kinds of different things. You'll notice on the top shelf there, you might be asking, what are those yellow bags with the hoses coming out of them? This is called a bladder bag. Remember Jamie mentioned carrying 40 pounds in his backpack? Well,
This is part of it.
in addition to the 40 pounds in your backpack, we're going to throw 45 pounds of water on top of that too, so you can carry that up the mountain. So now we're up to about 85 pounds carrying that up a hillside. So again, like I mentioned before, we might drive to as close as we can get to the fire in this, and then realize that we can't we don't have enough hose to get to the fire from this, so we'll fill up these bladder bags, and everybody on board will throw a backpack of water on and hike into the fire and see what we can do, right? So we carry heavy things. That's what we do. Okay, close this guy up.
So we see with all the equipment how physically demanding it is to be a wildland firefighter, and why it is so important for making workouts and living a healthy lifestyle a priority.
Yeah.
Is there a certification process that you have to go through each year to make sure that you're fit enough to do the job?
Yep. Every year a wildland firefighter, in order to get what we call a red card, and a red card is sort of your ticket to get onto a wildland fire, we do the pack test. It's not the hardest thing that we do, but if you're not ready for it, it can be really tricky. So you put 45 pounds on your back. We walk 3 miles on a flat course, and here out at Boulder Reservoir, our course is pretty much the dam out and back. 45 pounds, 3 miles, and you have 45 minutes to do it, and you can't run, you have to walk. So it's kind of like speed walking. So if you're not used to it, it tends to create some pain in the shins and the quads and your shoulders. So really good. A lot of people, before they get doing that every year, spend some time practicing for the pack test. But really, some of us who've done this, we call that the easiest hike of the year, because usually you're carrying 45 pounds up a hill, and it's a lot longer than 3 miles, and then you're wearing it all day long. So, but it's kind of that standing marker for entry into wildland fire, and that's something that everybody has to do every year, whether it's a hot shot on a hot shot crew, smoke jumpers, us here at Station 8, our structure firefighter partners on the line. So, yep, that's it. Cool. Just a quick scan around, you'll see the other trucks. Those might still be ways that we get to fire. That doesn't have any water hose, but we can put a bunch of people in it and still be able to get to fire that way. You'll see the bikes in the background. I'm surprised none of you have asked yet, but we generally don't ride bikes to fires. That's, again, part of our fitness aspect of things, just to kind of keep that aerobic fitness. But that's sort of the bay here at Station 8 and some of the different options we have of getting to fires.
So you showed us a lot of just different equipment that you use to fight fires. So when that equipment needs to be repaired or maintained, is there a shop that you send all of this to?
It can be. A lot of it we do ourselves. We've become pretty good at fixing small engines. Like on the chainsaws, we sharpen all our tools. We utilize the city's fleet services for any of the vehicle needs. Sometimes on large incidents, we'll be able to replace things that get damaged on that incident. So there's a lot of support inherently in the culture of wildland fire, but most of the stuff that we do here.
So there's a lot of work that you do when you're not fighting fires.
Yep.
It's not sitting around in a lazy boy watching TV. It's doing prep work so you're ready to go.
Absolutely. Readiness is a big part of it. And Jamie mentioned, how much training do you do and some of the stuff that's involved in training. And really and I kind of thought myself, we'd study a lot of fires that there's been fatalities or injuries on, so that we understand the path that other firefighters took to get into a bad circumstance. So studying leadership and that sort of stuff is really important part of that training too. So generally in downtime, you'll find people reading books or looking at past experiences of others that we help to improve as we move forward too. So very rarely do we actually get to use the chairs that you saw in the kitchen. So it's a nice, welcome pleasure if we do. So, cool.
Okay, well, thank you
You're
very
welcome.
much. I think everyone has learned a lot about wildland safety, what it's like to be a firefighter. If you have any additional questions, you can certainly reach out to the fire department at any time. If you found this video interesting and are interested in learning more about another job within the city of Boulder or more about the fire department, please send us a message, and we'll be happy to continue with the Facebook Live videos. Thank you very much for tuning in.